Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. Today's episode is the Essendon Bombers 2024 review. Their season is done, and they finished 11th on the ladder. We're going to review their season, have a look at some of the stats behind what went right, what went wrong. As we've done with every team so far, as they get eliminated, we have a look at them, at their season, as some of their players, what went right and wrong in terms of players and stats and all of that sort of stuff. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think of the Bombers season 2024. Did they improve on what they put out in 2023? Also, don't forget, we have 2 podcast episodes go live every week, Mondays and Fridays, on the YouTube and Spotify channels, so go check them out as well. And there's plenty of social media content as well, all over the place, at All Aussie Rules everywhere. So go check it all out. Without any further ado, we're going to jump into the Bombers 2024 season. They finished 11th. They ended up with lots of ones on that screen. 11 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw, and 11th place on the ladder. We'll now have a look at their match-by-match season. And as you can see, lots of green at the top, lots of red at the bottom. It was an interesting season for them. Kind of similar to what they did last year, in all honesty. If you haven't looked at or seen, I did a video on the Bombers about 10 weeks ago, 8-10 weeks ago. I think it was after the Collingwood win, so after round 17. That was just looking at the Bombers in 2024, comparing them to 2023. And things were very similar at that point, and to be honest, and continued to be very similar for the rest as well. Their season started okay. I don't think they were great against Hawthorn. I think they were lucky to get that win. In the end, they just kicked accurate and got the win. But they won by 24 points. Then they played pretty well against Sydney, in all honesty. Only lost by 5 goals in a really high-scoring game, and one that they performed pretty well in. They beat St Kilda, but that was not by any stretch of the imagination a good game. And then the wake-up call, I think, was the Port Adelaide game. They lost by 69 points. They looked atrocious. But it kind of woke them up, and they went on this little tear through rounds 5 through 11. They beat Bulldogs, which was a great win. They just got over the line over Adelaide. Anzac Day was a draw in a cracker. They looked like they were going to win most of the first half, most of the third quarter. Collingwood came back into it, but in the end, it was a draw. West Coast, over in West Coast, and they just got over the line. West Coast gave them a run for their money. They then had a really good win at Marvel Stadium against GWS. Once again, first half, GWS looked pretty good, but the Bombers just dominated that second half of football. North Melbourne, reasonably comfortable win. Richmond, they just got over the line at Dreamtime and the G. They then went up to Gold Coast, which at this point in time everyone was losing to Gold Coast up on the Gold Coast, so it's not bad that they lost by 11 points in that one. Carlton then got them by 26 points, and going into the bye on back-to-back losses was not the best result, but I mean, they're still at a pretty good point. They've won eight wins in 13 games, 8 wins and a draw from 13. So at that point, they're looking certainly like a team that should be playing finals and potentially pushing towards top 4. They came out of the bye, beat West Coast at Marvel Stadium. Once again, not outstanding performance, but they got the job done. Geelong gave them a bit of a belting, in all honesty. 45 points doesn't seem like a massive margin, but they were never really in that. They then beat Collingwood. They controlled that game for the most part, certainly with a better team on the night, and got the win. And then it all kind of fell apart from there. Got beaten by Melbourne by 17 points in the wet, when Melbourne weren't showing much at that point or for the rest of the season after that, really. So not a good result there. Then they got beaten by Adelaide at Marvel Stadium, which was not officially the nail in the coffin for their season, but it certainly was maybe the starting point of putting a nail into their coffin, because you don't want to be losing to Adelaide at Marvel Stadium if you're the Bombers, if you want to be playing finals. St Kilda then thrashed them by 53 points. St Kilda finished the season really well, so it's not the worst result of all time, but still not a great one. They then just got over the line against Fremantle by a point. to keep the season alive, give themselves a chance. They were always going to struggle with what they had in the last 2 weeks, so they probably needed a couple more wins earlier. But it gave them a chance. But then Gold Coast at Marvel, Gold Coast, who at that point had not won an away game for the season, went to Marvel and won. It was after the siren, in all honesty. Like, it was a 1 point loss. Mac Andrew kicked a great goal after the siren. Great goal, 30 metres out, but you know what I mean. And then they finished with Sydney at Marvel and lost by 39, and Brisbane at the Gabba by 20. So a really rough finish to the season, winning just one of the last 7 games. Is basically sums up where they are. Last year, I think it was they only won 2 out of the last 6 or 7, and this year they've only won 1 of the last 7. So, is it an inability to run out seasons? Was the start of the season a bit of a overperformance? There's lots of things that come into it, but at the end of the day, they just did not finish this season off well enough. After round 17, they just couldn't put together enough solid performances to win games of football, and that's what cost them in the end. We'll now move on to a comparison of their last 3 years. As you can see, last year, we'll start with 2024. 11-11-1 this year, obviously. 35 players used is a lot below, not a lot, but a bit below the average. I think the AFL average is at like 38, 39 players per year, per team. So a little bit below that. Their age demographic of their team and their experience has certainly been going up, which, I mean, you expect to kind of happen, but it's not the best sign when they're still not making finals. Maybe it drops a little bit next year. We'll see what happens with some things like Dyson Heppel's obviously retired. We'll see what other movements the Bombers make. Last year, same amount of wins, obviously 1 extra loss, seeing they had a draw this year. They scored slightly better in 2024 than they did in 2023, and also conceded a little bit less, so slight improvements in that regard. Last year, obviously, 34 players, and a little bit less experience and age across the board. 2022 was obviously a really down year. That was Ben Rutten's last year as coach. They went 7-15, finished 15th on the ladder. Used a lot of players that year, were a lot younger than they are now, a lot less experience. And the more I look at it, I've looked at a few things this week, just like the rises and falls of the Bombers. And I think that 2021 year was just a massive overperformance from them in the end to make finals. Because if you look at their last 6 seasons, it's pretty much a really straightish line that of their performance, and then that 2021 year is just way out in front. So maybe this is just where they are. Their development is a slow development, and I mean, if they keep going in the rate that they're going, they can keep improving, and they could make finals in, say, next year maybe. The rate they're going, it's possible. It'll be interesting to see what kind of happens in their off-season with ins and outs and whatnot. A lot of stats here. We don't look at them all, but it's just a massive amount of numbers. As we said, their points for and against slightly improved in both ways this year, and of course on the year before, which was 2022, was obviously a really bad year. So their points difference has gone from -9 per game to -5.7 this year. So it's improving. Their opposition's accuracy was really good this year, so that makes them look bad. Probably still need to improve their accuracy a little bit, in all honesty. They are a high disposing team, especially this year. They had a lot of uncontested football, which in some games certainly helped them. It was the way they played football. They also dominated inside 50s. That was their biggest difference in their football style, I think, from this year compared to last year and the year before. Was the uncontested footy certainly improved a bit, but that's not where it came. It was all about the territory this year. As you can see, the inside 50s went from -5 per game to +5 this year, so they really dominated that territory battle. their big issue this year, though, was their inability to get shots on goal from inside 50 attempts. As you can see down towards the bottom, forward efficiency at 43.9% is really bad. It's probably in the bottom 4 teams of the AFL, in all honesty, and that was their biggest issue. Dropped from 47.3% last year down to 43.9%, and if they had it at 47.3% this year, they would have played finals. There's no doubt about that. And also, up the other end, defensive efficiency also struggled a bit. I think that kind of comes with the way they played football. Was the repeat inside 50 entries allowed teams to sometimes get over the back of them with that slingshot football. A lot of teams have done it over recent years. And I think that's kind of why their defensive efficiency isn't great, because they get caught out on the transfer of play a couple times every game, and that really hurts them. We'll look at the scoring sources in a minute, but yeah, I think that's probably the major thing that's happened to them this year. Interesting to note, for a team that dominates territory battle, they don't win the metres gained per game, so they lose that by 79 metres per game, but yet win inside 50s by +5. So that tells you that they're keeping the ball locked in a lot, and it's just like repeat entries in, but they're not fully developing those plays into shots and so forward. Obviously, they had a bit of a ruck change this year. We talked Goldstein coming in, Sam Draper going in and out of the team, but the numbers, interestingly, haven't changed a whole heap in that regard. So, I don't know. We'll look at the individual players in a minute. It's an interesting time in the Essendon ruck stocks, I think, and what they do going forward. We'll have a look at the scoring sources now for their last 3 years. As I said, so we'll stoppages, they certainly improved in that regard, both offensively and defensively, in all honesty. Stoppages, they get an extra 6 points per game and also concede 2 less points, so that's a really good improvement in that regard. Not quite so good in the getting points from turnovers, slight drop, but nothing too major there. Their defensive transition obviously went from 34 points a game down to 32, so a slight drop there. Whereas defensively, the opposition have improved by a point in that regard from defensive half. However, their forward half has slightly improved, and the opposition's forward half has slightly dropped. So I think their back line, when they have the ball, has improved in that they don't turn the ball over and concede points from that defensive half. The issue is the turnovers up in the forward half that are conceding, in my opinion. They get caught out over the back, which happens in a developing young-ish team. They're around AFL average on age and experience, but they're a team that's still trying to find their footing. And as a development season, that's not terrible. Their centre bounce scoring stayed about the same, an extra point per game, but they conceded an extra 3.5 points per game from the centre bounce. So it's not doom and gloom there by any stretch, but just maybe if they can get that back down to about that 9.5 points that they had last year, that would be massive for them. We'll have a look at some of their players now. These are players that missed 5 games or more. Not every player that missed 5 games or more, but some of the key ones. Wiedemann obviously missed 22. I think he came in for the second last game, got injured, and missed the last. Will Setterfield missed 19. Archie Roberts 19. Elijah missed 16. Jordan Ridley missed 14. Dylan Shield 14. Some of these are due to form, some are injury. It's a mix of everything. It's just players that miss games. Nate Caddy 13. Alwyn Davey 13. Darcy Parish missed 11. Guelphy missed 10. Peter Wright 9. Jai Menzies 9. Xavier Dersma 8. Nick Hind 8. Sammy Draper 7. Dyson Hebel 5. And Archie Perkins 5. So it's a pretty long list of players that missed 5. Are all of them in the best 22? Absolutely not. But they're all players that are key in some way or other for the team. Best players by position this year. We'll start with the key defenders, as we do in all of these episodes. They had 3 key defenders that rated above a 6 in AFL ratings this year. Jordan Ridley actually played pretty well in his 9 games in terms of AFL ratings. Ben Mackay, I think he copped a little bit of flack from Essendon supporters this year, but I think he showed a pretty good season in all honesty. And Jaden Laverde dropped off on his last year's form, but was still okay. Probably not quite as good as he wanted to be. I think Ben Mackay is the one that is going to be crucial in this Bombers defence going forward. His intercept work is really, really good. His disposal is typically very good. He runs at a very high percentage most of the time. So I think Bomber fans need to temper their expectations. He's not the best defender in the AFL, but he is probably top 10 key defender, maybe even close to a top 5 key defender. And that's what you're going to get from him. Key forwards, Cole Langford, his start to the season was really good. I think up until probably around about the bye, he was really good. His numbers were very good. He was kicking good goals week in, week out. Second half of the year, probably not quite as good, in all honesty, and ended up with a rating very similar to last year. But still pretty solid performance from him. Peter Wright, he's only played 14 games this year. Very similar rating as well to last year, slightly down, but very similar. Harry Jones, he played 21. He had some really good games. He had some quiet games as well, but you kind of get that as a key forward, especially in a team that's not always performing as good. Their medium defenders, this is probably their strongest position, maybe, outside of their midfield line. They certainly have some potential in that medium defender role. Nick Martin, he does play wing sometimes, also half-back. He's had a great season, slightly improved on last year. Some of his numbers were really good, especially early season. He gets forward and kicks some goals as well, which is very beneficial for the team. Sometimes bites off a bit more than he can chew with the kicks, but I'm assuming he has the license to do that, because when it comes off, you can break a game open and get a scoring opportunity. So I don't think they'll be looking to temper that down at all. Dyson Heppel had a good season, in all honesty. He has announced his retirement. He's finished, but he finished really well. Like, he's had a great career, and this year was no different, in my opinion. Andrew McGrath, solid without being a world beater. Mason Redmond, slightly down on last year. 21 games, but still not too bad. Their medium forwards, Jake Stringer obviously does go into the centre at times, and his numbers in centre clearance is really good. He's got a really high centre clearance rate. Kicked a lot of goals. I think most amount of goals in the AFL this year for a non-tall forward. He made my All-AFL second team. He played every game. He was good. He didn't break games open. He did sometimes, but he didn't do it consistently. But when he did it well. Matt Guelphy missed quite a lot of football, but showed some really good signs. His game against GWS was really good at Marvel Stadium. I think he has the potential to really take that next step. Interesting to note that he was drafted as a midfielder, someone that can get in there and get a lot of contested football and clearances and stuff. So maybe one day he'll move into that more of that sort of role. We'll see. But I think he's shown enough potential to warrant a little bit of excitement in the future of his career. Jade Gresham joined the club this year. Got about the expected output from him, in all honesty. 22 games, okay. Nick Hind, not great. He's okay. Doesn't do enough, I don't think. Then their midfielders, obviously, without a doubt, their best player, Zach Merritt. He's another one that I think made my All-AFL second team, just missing out on the first team. Check out that video also on YouTube. It came out just over a week ago. So that's on my YouTube channel. Has all my first and second All-AFL team. He was really good, though, in all honesty. Sam Durham, he improved. He showed a really good improvement this year in in every way, really. From a AFL rating of 7.6 up to 12.6 was really good. Will Setterfield also improved, but only played 4 games, so it's not really much of an indication, I don't think. Dylan Shield missed a lot of football, but when he was playing was really good, especially towards the end of the season. Joe Caldwell, another one that was really good. Darcy, don't know where that name came from, but Darcy Parish was down on his form. It's a hard one because he did miss a lot of football and certainly never really got consistent football this year, but he'll be one that they're looking to develop back into his best next year. And if he does, with the rest of the midfield that they had this year, all showing similar numbers, like if Zach Merritt, Sam Durham, Will Setterfield, and Dylan Shield and Jai Caldwell all have similar years next year, but with more games, obviously, not missing as many, and Darcy Parish coming back in for full season at around about that 13 points per game mark. They're going to be dangerous in that midfield. There's no doubt about that. Xavier Dersma did well. Had a solid season, especially early on in the year. Archie Perkins played some good games, but he just doesn't quite have the consistency. And I also think he lacks a little bit in the defensive side of the midfield game as well. Their ruckman, this is the biggest, I guess, talking point maybe. It's interesting to see what they're going to do with their ruck going forward. Sam Draper played 16 games, and in all honesty, he was good. He did his role. He makes mistakes sometimes, but he's a young ruckman that runs and carries and gets forward, and you're going to make mistakes. That's just the way it is, the way he plays football. He was good, though. Nick Bryan, I think he played okay in his 5 games. He's very young for a ruckman. I think he's only 22. I could be completely wrong, but showed enough in his 5 games to warrant maybe being given more of a chance next season. Todd Goldstein, obviously getting towards the end of his season, he didn't have the season that he would have been wanting. He was really good last year, but this year he played 14 games, so he missed quite a few, a lot of them due to form and whatnot. I don't think he showed enough this year, in all honesty, and that's probably something that the Bombers are probably disappointed about in terms of last year to this year. One final thing to look at is the players from 2023 that are no longer at the Bombers. First, Anthony McDonald-Tipawuni. Obviously hasn't had much to do over the last couple years. Last year he only came back and played a couple games, so ignore that rating, but he obviously retired. He had a great career, so they obviously miss him. The big one is Massimo D'Ambrosio. Didn't get much opportunity last year at Essendon, went across to Hawthorn and almost was an All-Australian wingman, and shown a great deal of ability on that wing. It helps when your team's playing really well and really free-flowing football. If you haven't... also last night they played their elimination final against the Bulldogs, and he was outstanding again. It might have even been his best game of his career last night. So he's a big loss there. But he never got that opportunity at Essendon for whatever reason. Andrew Phillips retired. Patrick Voss was delisted and then picked up by Fremantle. Didn't do a huge amount over there, so nothing too special. And then the final one that they lost was Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, who went to Port Adelaide and, in all honesty, hasn't had the best season of his career. And to be honest, I think Essendon did better out of that, losing him out of the back line but gaining Ben Mackay. I think Ben Mackay's the better defender, in all honesty. So that's where the Bombers are. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do next year, because the last 4 seasons have been really weird, having that big bounce up to making the 8 and getting knocked out in an elimination final to the Bulldogs in 2021, followed by a really bad year in 2022 where they only managed 7 wins, and then 23 and 24, 11 wins. They need to take that next step. They need to find a way to develop that, whether it's a culture thing, whether it's getting in players, I don't know. It's just feels like they're stagnating at this point, but it's a very tight and compact league, especially this year, but also last year. The last 2 years have been really, really tight. Outside of like the bottom 3 teams, both years. So I think it's just a matter of just slight changes could make all the difference. And I think making finals is huge at the moment because you can win it from 8th. There's no doubt about it. I think it's going to be interesting. On a side note, Hawthorn could well go all the way this year. They finished 7th on the ladder this season and started 0-5. So there's not much difference between having a successful season and having a failed season. In the end, I think this goes down as a fail for Essendon, even though they finished 11th, basically exactly where they were last year. They showed enough this year that, and last year as well, to say that they can play finals. They just can't quite put that finishing touch on it. So we'll see what happens over the off-season, what they bring in, what they lose. But I think it could be another year about the same. They're going to finish, I think, 8th to 11th next year. That's my prediction. Let me know down in the comments where you think they'll finish. That's the end of the Bombers 2024 review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been All Aussie Rules. Plenty more reviews coming out, plenty of other content, plenty of podcast episodes. Go check it all out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.